They are not coming back. 28 F-35 Lightning II fighter jets, gone, destroyed, in 11 minutes over the Strait of Hormuz, the most expensive military aircraft ever built by human civilization. Aircraft that cost the American taxpayer $400 billion across 3 decades. Aircraft that were supposed to be invisible, unstoppable, untouchable. Every single one of them fell from the sky before a single Iranian target was destroyed. And the United States Navy did something it has not done in living memory. It turned its carriers around. It pulled back from the Strait of Hormuz without firing a single shot in return. And the most strategically critical 21 miles of ocean on Earth passed into Iranian control without one American condition being met. This is not a rumor. This is not speculation. This is the operational reality that the Pentagon cannot explain, that the White House cannot spin, and that mainstream media is not equipped to make you understand. Tonight, we are going to make you understand it. Exactly what happened, exactly how it happened, and exactly what kind of world you are waking up into now that it has. Stay with us, because nothing after this is the same. Before you can understand the destruction, you need to understand why these aircraft were sent in the first place, because the mission logic itself tells you everything about the assumptions that just got shattered. American military doctrine in the Persian Gulf has always followed a specific order of operations. Before you strike, you suppress. Before bombers go in, you send the aircraft capable of blinding, confusing, and destroying the enemy's air defense network. You clear the sky, then everything else follows. That suppression mission, SEAD in military terminology, suppression of enemy air defenses, was exactly what these 28 F-35s were assigned. They were not the strike package, they were the door openers. The aircraft whose job was to make the air safe for everything that came after. And the entire doctrine rested on one belief. The F-35 is invisible to air defense systems. That belief is now dead. The F-35 stealth is real. Its radar cross-section, meaning how visible it is to radar systems, is reduced to an extraordinary degree. Against conventional radar systems, against the frequency bands that legacy surface-to-air missile systems use to find and track targets, the F-35 is genuinely difficult to detect at meaningful ranges. The S-400 Triumf is not a conventional radar system. Russia's engineers built the S-400 around a specific problem, a problem Moscow had been studying since 1999, when NATO's air campaign against Yugoslavia showed the world and showed the Kremlin exactly how America wins wars. Not with boots on the ground first, with air power. Unchallenged, unopposed, systematic air power that dismantles an enemy's infrastructure, military, and morale from 30,000 feet before a single soldier crosses a border. Russia spent 25 years building the answer to that strategy. The answer operates across multiple radar frequency bands simultaneously, including the lower frequency bands that expose stealth aircraft in ways that high-frequency tracking systems cannot. The physics of stealth are frequency dependent. What makes the F-35 invisible at high frequencies makes it significantly more visible at low frequencies. The S-400 knows this. Its designers built around this exact vulnerability. But the S-400 deployment waiting over Hormuz was not a single battery. It was an integrated network, multiple radar systems across complementary frequency bands, all data linked, all sharing targeting information in real time. What one component detected, every component could engage. And layered into this network were passive radar systems, systems that emit nothing, systems that cannot be detected, jammed, or located by the F-35's electronic warfare suite because they broadcast no signal whatsoever. They simply listen. They build their targeting picture from the electromagnetic environment the F-35 itself creates as it flies. The F-35 flew into that network with its electronic warfare systems running perfectly and finding nothing to fight against. When the formation crossed into engagement range, the S-400 network did not behave the way American planning models predicted. Detection came earlier than the classified assessments estimated. Tracking quality was sufficient to support missile engagement before the formation reached its planned weapons release point. And the engagement sequence, the order in which targets were selected, reflected a tactical sophistication that made the outcome worse, faster. The first missiles were not fired at random F-35s. They were fired at the formation's electronic warfare aircraft. The specific platforms whose jamming systems provided collective protection to the entire formation. Remove those first, degrade the formation's defenses, simplify everything that comes next. Within 4 minutes of the first missile launch, 6 aircraft had been struck. The remaining 22 executed their pre-planned escape maneuvers. The altitude changes, the direction breaks, the electronic countermeasure sequences that American doctrine had developed for exactly this contingency. Against the systems those maneuvers were designed to defeat, they would have worked. Against the S-400's multi-frequency tracking and the 40N6 missile with a 400-kilometer engagement range and a terminal guidance seeker that does not need ground radar to complete its kill, the maneuvers bought seconds, not survival, seconds. The engagement lasted 11 minutes from first launch to the destruction of the final aircraft. 11 minutes, 28 aircraft, 0 Iranian air defense systems destroyed, 0 emergency transmissions confirmed, 0 ejections recorded. The speed and totality of the engagement left no window for any of the individual survival actions that years of training prepare a pilot to execute. The formation that launched from carrier decks and regional bases in the pre-dawn darkness simply ceased to exist. When battle group commanders received the final assessment, the decision that followed was the only rational one available. The fleet withdrew, the strait was conceded, and the most consequential military engagement of the 21st century was over before the morning news cycle ended. The S-400 Triumf did not become the weapon that just destroyed 28 F-35s overnight. It became that weapon because Russia spent a quarter century making it one. Its radar architecture is where the anti-stealth capability becomes operationally decisive. The acquisition radar operates at L-band frequencies, the lower portion of the radar spectrum, where stealth-reduced aircraft present substantially larger radar cross-sections than they do against high-frequency systems. L-band detection does not provide the targeting precision needed for missile guidance, but it provides the initial tracking data that allows the system to cue its fire control radars at reduced range, where the stealth advantage narrows enough to achieve targeting lock. That combination is the core of the threat. L-band detection finds the aircraft, fire control radar guides the missile. The 40N6's own active seeker completes the kill, independent of ground radar entirely. Jamming the ground-based systems does not stop a missile that has already found you with its own eyes. The Iranian deployment added passive radar layered across this architecture, systems that generate no emissions, nothing for the F-35 to detect, characterize, or jam, nothing for mission planning algorithms to account for. Systems that exploit the F-35's own emissions to build targeting solutions without ever revealing their locations. Here is the harder truth that the Hormuz engagement has now forced into the open. The F-35 was designed against the threat environment of the early 2000s. Its stealth characteristics, its electronic warfare systems, its entire operational concept was optimized against the air defense threats that existed or were projected to exist when the program was in development. The S-400 in Iranian hands, integrated with Iranian passive radar systems, operated by crews trained by Russian instructors over years, is not the threat environment of 2005. It is the threat environment of 2025. The F-35 encountered that gap over Hormuz. 28 aircraft and their crews paid for it, and now the myth is gone. Not questioned, not complicated, gone. Every adversary that calculated its strategic position partly around the assumption that F-35s could operate over its territory with impunity is now running revised numbers. Those revised numbers will produce revised procurement decisions, revised operational doctrines, revised assessments of what it actually costs to challenge American power. The silence that fell over Washington after the confirmation was not the silence of deliberation. It was the silence of an institution that has encountered a reality for which no prepared answer exists. The immediate operational cascade was total. Every air operation planned for the Persian Gulf theater had to be reassessed. Every carrier battle group in the region was now operating within the engagement envelope of a system that had just proven it could defeat their best air cover. Every contingency plan built on the assumption of American air dominance required fundamental revision. The carriers moved, and that movement is the strategic message that matters most. American carrier battle groups do not retreat. Their entire operational history since World War II is one of moving toward crises. The flag follows the carrier. Every adversary on the planet has understood that posture as the physical expression of American strategic will. The withdrawal from Hormuz's engagement range is a different kind of message. One that every government, every military establishment, and every non-state actor on Earth receives simultaneously and is already processing. Inside Washington, the political collapse runs parallel to the operational one. The entire domestic narrative built around restored American military credibility has been confronted with an operational reality that no available rhetorical instrument can bridge. Congressional hearings are being demanded, classified briefings requested. The questions being asked have no comfortable answers. How did intelligence assessments fail to accurately characterize the S-400's effectiveness? Why were 28 aircraft committed against a threat environment whose parameters were not fully understood? What does the loss of air dominance over this theater mean for American commitments everywhere else? The economic dimension hits simultaneously and directly. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of the world's oil supply. Iranian control over that waterway, even the credible threat of interference without an actual blockade, transmits price shocks through every economy on the planet. Oil markets have already moved. The consumer price implications reach American households through energy costs with a speed and directness that creates immediate political pain. An administration managing the most significant American military defeat in a generation is simultaneously managing an economic consequence that hits every kitchen table in America. Iran calculated all of this, and they executed it with precision. Here is the irony that no one in Washington wants to say out loud. The instruments the United States used to prevent Iran from developing this capability did not prevent it. They shaped the specific direction in which it developed. By blocking Iran's access to conventional military technology through sanctions and technology transfer restrictions, American policy forced Iranian military development into asymmetric channels. Area denial systems, distributed, resilient, low-signature architecture, capabilities that are inherently more resistant to the American way of war than a conventional force with identifiable bases and vulnerable supply lines would ever be. The sanctions did not defang the Iranian military. They forced it to evolve in the specific directions most dangerous to American operational concepts. The S-400 acquisition represents where that Iranian evolution intersected with Russian strategic interests. For Moscow, this transfer served multiple purposes simultaneously. Revenue, an operational demonstration of the S-400's capabilities in the most demanding adversarial environment possible, deeper strategic alignment with Tehran, and costs imposed on American military planning that relieved pressure on Russian interests in other theaters. The operators who employed the S-400 with such devastating effectiveness did not learn this overnight. The training pipeline for S-400 crews runs months before operators are considered ready. The tactical sophistication demonstrated over Hormuz, the sequencing of targets, the exploitation of formation vulnerabilities, required years of sustained institutional investment in developing this specific human capability. Weapons can be destroyed. The knowledge, doctrine, and institutional culture distributed across the minds of thousands of trained operators cannot be precision-struck into irrelevance. Iran enters the post-Hormuz world with its national narrative of resistance, receiving its most powerful operational validation in the history of the Islamic Republic. Decades of strategic patience, years of sanctions, covert operations, and relentless pressure. And the answer delivered was 28 burning F-35s and a retreating American fleet. That answer cannot be sanctioned away. It cannot be struck away. It is the most durable strategic asset Iran possesses because it is the foundation on which everything else is built. What has just ended is not merely American dominance over the Persian Gulf. What has just ended is the premise that organized the international system for 30 years. The post-Cold War global order was built on a military technological foundation. The operational reality, validated in the Gulf War, validated in Kosovo, validated in the opening phases of Afghanistan and Iraq, that American air power was effectively unchallengeable wherever the United States chose to project it. For 3 decades, governments built their strategic calculations around that operational fact. Over the Strait of Hormuz, that fact was operationally refuted. Not in a war game, not in a classified assessment, in the actual destruction of actual aircraft in an actual engagement. And that refutation is permanent in the specific sense that matters most. The world now knows with operational certainty that the F-35 can be found and killed by the S-400 in Iranian hands. That knowledge cannot be declassified back into uncertainty. Russia's strategic position is immediately enhanced. the S-400 has just received the most compelling operational demonstration in its history against the most advanced Western combat aircraft in existence. Every government that perceives American air power as a potential threat and is evaluating Russian air defense systems is now looking at this engagement record and drawing procurement conclusions. China watches with its own specific focus. Beijing's strategic challenge, deterring American air power from intervening effectively in a Taiwan contingency, depends on developing exactly the layered, multispectral air denial capability that Iran just demonstrated works. Chinese military planners have been investing in parallel systems using design principles that mirror the S-400's approach. The Iranian engagement provides operational data of genuine intelligence value for refining both the systems and the doctrine for employing them. If Iran can deny American air dominance over the Persian Gulf, China's confidence in contesting American air operations over the Taiwan Strait is correspondingly and significantly increased. For the broader community of nations that has lived under the implicit strategic coercion of American military dominance for 3 decades, the Hormuz engagement carries implications that will not be announced publicly, but will shape strategic behavior in ways both immediate and cumulative. The implicit threat of American air power constrained the strategic options of countless governments across every region on Earth, a constraint that has just visibly weakened in ways every government on that list is already calculating. The Gulf Cooperation Council states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and the rest built their security architectures on the foundation of American military protection, American naval presence, American air bases, American security guarantees. All of those were credible precisely because of the military capability backing them. An American military that has withdrawn its carrier battle groups from engagement range following the loss of 28 aircraft is a different strategic partner than the one those security architectures were built around. The diplomatic realignment will not happen overnight, but its direction has changed. And every capital in the Gulf is already running the new calculations. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a waterway, it is the physical choke point through which the global economy breathes. Iranian control, even partial control, even the credible threat of interference transmits leverage across every energy market on Earth. Countries under American economic pressure through dollar-dominated financial systems now have new room to maneuver in an environment where American strategic credibility has been publicly and operationally reduced. What is emerging from the fires over Hormuz is not simply a changed Middle East, it is a changed world. The transition to multipolarity has been described and predicted and debated for years. Over the Strait of Hormuz, it arrived. The debris on the surface of the Persian Gulf will be documented, eventually catalogued. The pilots who launched from carrier decks in the pre-dawn darkness and did not return will be mourned by families whose grief exists entirely outside the strategic calculations that sent them into that airspace. And the world will keep moving, realigning, repositioning, recalculating, but it will be calculating against a new baseline now. The question this engagement puts before every government, every military institution, and every strategic analyst alive is not whether American power remains real. It does. The question is whether it remains decisive, whether the assumption that the United States can project air power into any theater and achieve air dominance still holds. Over Hormuz, the answer was delivered by 28 burning F-35s falling into the Persian Gulf. Every capital on Earth heard it. The world that comes after is being built on that answer right now.